Let me tell you something. There comes a time in history when silence is no longer an option. For years, India chose restraint, believing that diplomacy alone could secure its place in the world. It was a patient approach, it was dignified, and in many ways, it was necessary. But patience, if mistaken for weakness, becomes dangerous. And that's exactly what was happening. The world had grown accustomed to India being quiet, being reserved, playing the supporting role while others directed the play. But then came the moment when silence had to be broken. And when India finally spoke, it wasn't with a whisper, it was with the roar of a nation that had waited long enough to show its true strength. This defining stand was not just about responding to one challenge or one individual. It was about making it clear that India is not a spectator in the global arena. It is a central force shaping the rules of the game. When a nation carries the weight of over 1 billion people, when it holds centuries of history, culture, and resilience, it cannot afford to be underestimated. And so, India's decision to shift from silence to strength is more than symbolic, it's transformative. It changes how the world must now look at India, not as an option, but as a power that commands respect. Think about what strength really means here. It's not just about military might or economic numbers. It's about the courage to say, enough. We will not be dismissed and we will not be dictated to. That takes more than weapons, more than currency, it takes character. And India's character has always been built on resilience. This resilience is born from a people who have faced invasions, oppression and hardship, yet never lost their spirit. That spirit has now crystallized into a bold and undeniable presence on the world stage. What makes this stand so powerful is that it wasn't made out of arrogance. It wasn't about seeking unnecessary confrontation. It was about dignity. When your dignity is tested, when your sovereignty is challenged, there comes a moment when you either defend it or lose it forever. India chose to defend it. And in doing so, it set an example for nations everywhere that power is not about how loudly you shout, but about when you choose to finally let your voice be heard. The beauty of this moment is that it is not just about global politics, it is about identity. For decades, many Indians have heard the world talk about their nation as a developing power, a future player, a country on the rise. But this move tells us something very different. India is not on the rise, India has risen. It has arrived. The time of waiting for validation is over. This is the season of action, and action has spoken louder than all the empty promises of recognition from others. You see, silence can be strategic, but strength is destiny. For too long, India allowed its silence to be misinterpreted as passivity. Now, with one decisive move, it has redefined itself. It has shown that it is capable not only of holding its ground, but of forcing others to reconsider theirs. And that shift is monumental. Because once respect is commanded, it cannot be taken back. Once strength is displayed, it cannot be unseen. And once a nation finds its voice, it cannot go back to silence again. This is what defines a turning point in history. When India stood tall, it wasn't just a defense of its sovereignty, it was the birth of a new self-image. It was a reminder to its people that they are not just participants in someone else's story, they are the authors of their own. It was also a message to the world: you can no longer talk about the future without talking about India. And that's not ego, that's reality. Now, understand this, strength is contagious. When a nation like India decides to stand firm, it inspires millions of people across the globe who are watching, who are tired of being sidelined, who are tired of being silenced. India's voice has become their hope. Its defiance has become their courage. Its dignity has become their model. And this is why what happened is not just India's story, it is humanity's story. So let us be clear, this was not about showing aggression, but about showing resolve. It was not about dominating others, but about refusing to be dominated. It was not about seeking conflict, but about commanding respect. And in that moment, India showed the world the meaning of true strength, strength rooted in dignity, strength born from unity, and strength expressed through courage. And when you see a nation transform its silence into strength, when you witness that roar replacing the whisper, you realize something powerful. that this is only the beginning. For a long time, the global balance of power was presented as fixed, as though it were some permanent law of nature. The world was divided into blocks, with a handful of nations deciding the terms of engagement, while the rest were expected to follow in silence. But nothing in history is permanent. Power shifts, influence changes hands, and eventually a new reality takes shape. That is exactly what we are witnessing right now. With its bold stand, India has made it clear that the old rules are not set in stone anymore. The equation is being rewritten, and those who once believed they held all the control are being forced to acknowledge that the world has changed. India's move is not just about asserting itself, it is about challenging a system that for too long favored the few at the expense of the many. When a nation of more than 1 billion decides that it will no longer accept outdated hierarchies, it is not just making a national statement, it is shaking the very foundation of global order. And make no mistake, this is not about confrontation. It is about fairness. It is about demanding that every nation, regardless of size or wealth, has a right to dignity and respect. Think about the significance of this. For decades, international institutions and global forums were dominated by narratives written in Western capitals. India was always present, but it was treated as an observer. That era is over. Today, the world cannot draft an agenda without India's voice at the table. Whether it's trade, technology, climate, or security, the influence of India cannot be bypassed. This is not arrogance. It's the reality of numbers, the reality of growth, and the reality of willpower. When you redraw an equation, you don't just erase what existed before. You replace it with something stronger, more accurate, and more reflective of reality. That is exactly what India is doing. It is replacing an outdated unipolar mindset with a multipolar reality. A reality where no single country or alliance can claim to speak for the world. A reality where nations like India are no longer background voices, but central forces shaping the discussion. This is not just a shift in power. It's a correction of power. It is the world adjusting to the truth that balance cannot be dictated by the privileged few forever. What makes this moment so powerful is that India's rise is not built on coercion but on contribution. It is not forcing nations into submission, it is earning their partnership. Countries across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and beyond look to India as proof that dignity and progress can go hand in hand. They see a nation that has maintained its democratic values, protected its sovereignty, and still found a way to become one of the fastest growing economies in the world. That inspires trust, and that trust is far more powerful than fear. The rewriting of the global power equation is not only about external recognition, it is also about internal confidence. For the Indian people, this is validation that their sacrifices, their resilience, and their determination are shaping something bigger than themselves. It is a reminder that their voice matters on the world stage, and it is being heard loud and clear. For years, they were told that leadership of the world order would always remain in foreign hands. Today, they are watching their country step into a position where it not only participates but influences, not only listens but directs. Let's also understand the deeper ripple effect here. Once India asserts itself, others follow. Once India demands a seat at the table, other nations feel empowered to do the same. This is how a system transforms, not through sudden collapse, but through steady correction. And that correction is underway right now. The old powers may resist, but they cannot deny what has already changed. The world economy is shifting, demographics are shifting, alliances are shifting, and so too must the balance of power. The days when one group could define the rules are gone. Now, it is about dialogue, it is about inclusion, it is about acknowledging that true strength comes not from silencing others, but from allowing every nation to stand with pride. India has shown that it is not enough to play the game. You have to change the game if the rules are unfair. And that is exactly what this defining stand has achieved. It has forced the world to confront the reality of a multipolar age, an age where no voice can be ignored, no nation can be sidelined, and no future can be written without the acknowledgement of new powers. This is what it means to redraw the global power equation, to take an outdated structure and replace it with a new balance that reflects the dignity and aspirations of all. And in doing so, India has reminded the world that the future will not be dictated, it will be shared. There are moments in history when the true measure of a nation is not in its wealth, not in its weapons, not even in its alliances, but in the strength of its spirit. What we are witnessing with India is exactly that, a demonstration that dignity, unity, and willpower can move mountains. This is not about strategy on paper or speeches at international forums. It is about the inner core of a nation that refuses to bend, refuses to be humiliated, and refuses to allow its sovereignty to be treated as negotiable. That is the essence of dignity. Dignity is not something given, it is something defended. And India has defended it with an iron resolve. When pressure came from powerful voices, when attempts were made to corner and lecture, the choice could have been to compromise, to stay quiet, to avoid conflict. But dignity does not survive in silence when it is being tested. Dignity survives only when a stand is taken. And in that moment, India showed that its dignity is non-negotiable. It sent a message to every citizen and to the entire world: respect is not begged for, respect is earned and protected. What made this stand even more powerful was the unity behind it. 1 billion voices, diverse in culture, language, and belief, stood as one. In the past, the weakness of nations often came from within: division, disagreement, and disunity. But here India displayed something remarkable. When it came to defending its national pride, there was no division. There was no north or south, no urban or rural, no rich or poor. It was one nation, one people. That unity is what magnified the power of the stand, because when the world sees not a fractured society, but a united one, it understands that nothing can shake that foundation. And then comes willpower. You can have resources, you can have opportunity, but without willpower, they amount to nothing. Willpower is the fuel that transforms adversity into triumph. India's willpower has been tested for centuries. Tested by invasions, colonization, poverty, and external pressure. Yet every time it endured and every time it rose again. That is national willpower passed down from generation to generation. And today, that same willpower has taken the country from being underestimated to being unignorable. The truth is, this stand is not just about politics. It is a lesson for every single person in every walk of life. Dignity is not about arrogance, it is about self-respect. Unity is not about uniformity, it is about standing together when it matters most. And willpower is not about never falling down, it is about always rising back up stronger. This is why India's action resonates so deeply, because it speaks not just to governments and diplomats, but to ordinary people who dream of living with respect, who dream of being seen and heard. It is also a reminder that true power is not always visible. It does not always come from tanks or treaties. Sometimes it comes from the collective determination of a people who say, "We will not allow ourselves to be belittled." That invisible force, dignity, unity, willpower can outweigh any external pressure. It is what turns a moment into a movement and a stand into a statement that echoes across the globe. Think about the message this sends to the younger generation of India. They are growing up in a time when their nation is not bowing, but standing tall. They are watching a lesson in real time that no matter how powerful the opposition, no matter how loud the criticism, if you stay united, if you protect your dignity, and if your willpower does not break, you cannot be stopped. That lesson will outlast any single moment. It will live in their spirit for decades to come. This is why India's defining stand is more than a political act. It is a moral one. It is a signal to the world that greatness does not come from bullying or domination, but from standing with courage and principle. And it is a reminder to its people that their strength lies not only in their numbers, but in their shared belief that they deserve respect and will fight for it if they must. Because at the end of the day, dignity without defense is weakness, unity without purpose is fragile, and willpower without action is meaningless. But when all three come together, when a nation chooses to live with dignity, to act with unity, and to endure with willpower, then nothing in the world can stop it from writing its own destiny.